Hello, everybody, and welcome to a video where I will be going through the Crimson Vow draft previews, the cards from previous season that look like they're going to be interesting or unique in draft, and talk about them based on what caught my eye. It is November 3rd, so I'm using the official Wizards of the Coast card image gallery from November 3rd, so those are the cards that I have seen that I'm going through, and just talking about some of the more interesting cards that I found. If you enjoyed the video, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe for more content, including more Crimson Val. It's literally on the screen and I almost forgot what it was. Content. And without further ado, let's get to the cards. Starting off with Arm the Cathars. This one is interesting to me because the first time I saw it, I thought it was an instant, and it is most certainly not an instant. But that begs the question, is it actually still worth playing? It feels like it could enable some pretty massive attacks, but it's also the sort of card that I would never play. So kind of an interesting card. I don't think it's actually very good because sorcery speed cards like this just punch in for some damage, but it has the potential to punch in for a lot of damage. So just keep in mind that it's not an instant because it definitely looks like it's the sort of card that would be. Vigilance is certainly relevant for this sort of thing as well. Another card, Resistance Squad. This card just seems really nice. I wanted to highlight this card because I think it kind of gives white a tool that was lacking in its arsenal for quite some time, which was card draw. And it was one of the reasons that for many sets white was quite weak, was because the Wizards hadn't figured out a way to get white card advantage. And I think this is sort of the perfect card to give white a little bit of a 2-for-1 because it only fits into certain decks. It plays well in an aggressive strategy with which white decks often want to do, but it also helps you keep the cards flowing, which you really need to be able to do in a lot of these modern day limited sets. So I really just like the card. I think the design is sweet, and I think that I just was really happy to see this when I was going through the cards. You also will notice that I'm only looking at the commons and uncommons. The rares are really complicated, so I don't generally look at them until after I've kind of internalized the commons and uncommons. But yeah, looking next at Diver Scab, this one's also pretty interesting. It was pointed out to me when I was listening to some other folks talking about the card that you can sacrifice itself with exploit, which is something you may not have in your just because if you've never played with the mechanic before. But yeah, you can exploit the creature to itself, which is just something that's certainly relevant for this sort of card, where sometimes you're just going to want to clear your opponent's blocker or something like that, or get rid of their pesky creature and make them have to recast it, and it just kind of can buy you some time even if you have an empty board. So keep that in mind with Diver Scab. You can sacrifice itself, and it actually looks like a pretty good card because that's a nice effect to have. Paying 5 mana at sorcery speed for that wouldn't be the best, but the fact that you can sacrifice a 2/2 and end up with a big stats boost on your creature while doing this is pretty nice. Next is Scattered Thoughts. This card looks really good to me. I oftentimes, when I see a card draw effect, I imagine the game states and how it's going to play out, and it does look like there's a decent number of ways to not only use your graveyard but also to use the instant speed effect, where there's a couple of counter spells that look like they could be solid in this set, or maybe just the one counter spell that I've seen that looks like it could be solid. Syncopate is a card that has historically been okay. It's a card that's in this set. I at least thought Syncopate was pretty solid when it was in Dominaria. And there's other ways to use instant speed stuff, and Scattered Thoughts just looks like a pretty cool way, especially because when you look at the top 4 cards of your library, you actually kind of have a much better idea. You can plan things out, where if you're looking at the top 2 and you see a card that you would like to put in your graveyard for value, like a Disturb card, you might be well, I don't know if I want to actually put that in the graveyard because I might want to cast the front half. But when you're looking at the top 4, you can have more knowledge on oh, I know that I'm going to have 2 spells still, so I can afford to pitch this card to the graveyard for extra value. And at instant speed is pretty nice as well. So the card draw spells tend to be format specific on how the instant speed stuff lines up and how the how fast the format is. But this card just looks really good to me right off the bat, and it maybe doesn't look like a very good card, but 4 mana draw 2, but with a lot of card selection built in, is a really nice way to pull ahead in a game. Next up is Gluttonous Guest. This one's really interesting to me. I don't know how valuable a blood token is going to be, but I do know that historically this is the sort of card where I would almost always just give this a terrible rating and not be very high on it. But then the blood token randomly is a huge synergy piece, and it's something that I kind of missed the boat on. But just keep in mind how valuable a blood token is, and also keep in mind that incidental life gain is actually very a relevant part of this card, where if you gain 3 life from this, a 3-mana 1/4 that generates you a little bit of advantage with a blood token and then gains you 3 or 4 life is actually reasonably better than a 3-mana 1/4 that doesn't gain you some life, because incidental life gain can just really punish the aggressive decks that are trying to push you out of the format. So it's going to depend on how valuable a blood token is which I have yet to see. But I will say that I came in a little bit. I've come in low on some of the mechanics in the past few sets. Like I remember in Strixhaven, I was pretty low on the learn stuff. I was like, what? Why would you ever want to just get a randomly like mediocre card from your sideboard? Or like, why would a 2/2 card that can't block be like super relevant or things like that? Like I recognize there was potential. I'm pretty sure in my mind I'm trying to remember. Like I was very low on all of the lesson cards. I was like, man, this card just doesn't do anything. What's happening? But I think I recognize the potential a bit more with Disturb. But the Gluttonous Guest is one of those like cards that generates an extra resource, works with a set mechanic, and it could just be like a key piece of the deck if you really just need a way to get a blood token that's just like reliable. So kind of an interesting card. And the incidental life gain, don't underestimate that. It's worth some percentage of a card. Like if a card like that was 1 mana gain 10 life would probably be worth playing. And so you can kind of imagine all that incidental life gain does add up. I spent a lot of time talking about that card. The next card is a way to use the blood tokens. It's like the only card I've seen so far that like really uses the blood tokens in a meaningful way to like get an actual card advantage. And even though it does cost 5 mana and it has to attack to do its stuff, it seems like a pretty nice like payoff for the blood counters. So keep that in mind. There are going to probably be other ways to use the blood tokens, and so it can maybe affect how you're looking at these blood token cards. A Braid, just wanted to highlight why is this at common. It's just absolutely fantastic card, and it randomly blows up artifacts. So it's going to make artifacts just worse in the format because a Braid is just going to be played by everybody, because 2 mana deal 3 to a creature is just incredible. So I don't know why this got rarity shifted down from uncommon. I think it was a pretty good uncommon, and it's a great common. So like could just be the best common in the set. I mean, haven't seen all the commons, but this card is just incredible. And so yeah, I don't know why this is a common. Just wanted to highlight that it's going to make artifacts a little bit worse in the format because everyone's going to be playing a Braid, and so they'll just randomly have that mode. So keep that in mind when you're going to consider an artifact, but mostly just like take a Braid because it's super powerful. Next is Belligerent Guest. I always think it's very interesting when a card can generate advantage when it attacks, because that can be very snowbally and sometimes not very fun. But I think this is actually a really good middle ground because it doesn't look like blood tokens are going to be like overwhelmingly powerful, but you're going to have some more synergies with them. With the card sort of thing like Belligerent Guest, just keep in mind it isn't going to be the end of the world if you get hit with this probably. And also, like, it does play well with combat tricks if you do have it, because they're going to probably want to block it, and it has trample. So if you use a combat trick, it'll get through that extra damage. So just kind of a cool design. I really liked this one when I was looking at it. I was like, wow. So like it attacks pretty well, it gets you some blood tokens, and just I liked the design. Next is Honeymoon Hearse. One of the reasons I like this card is because it is like on some of the basic land art, which is kind of fun. But also just seems like a really cool card. Like 3 mana, 5/5 worth of stats. You really want to make sure you like, if you were to play this card, you would like want to curve into it, like go like 2-drop into this into like 4-drop, and then you can tap the creature that you've just played, so you can like play your 4-drop and immediately tap it to use the hearse. It's kind of like finicky though, so I don't think it doesn't seem like that good, especially with a Braid in the format, because a Braid can just massacre this card like very easily. So one of those artifacts that's a bit hard to use, but like hitting for 5 is pretty nice, and it also gives you like some extra utility. Kind of gives your creatures like semi haste, where if you have a creature that can't attack anyway, and then you play a new creature, all of a sudden you're bashing with your 5/5. But just I thought it was a really cool design. Because you need 2 creatures, the 2 people that are presumably getting married, to make it work. So I just thought that was kind of a cool design, and wanted to show it off. I think it's just a kind of like a cool design. I don't think it's like that powerful. Vehicles that have to be crewed by 2 creatures are generally a lot worse, but it's the sort of thing that could have some potential in the right builds. But it will get a lot worse because of a Braid. Next is Reckless Impulse. This is a really cool, like, I just like the design on this one. Like, card draw wise, it's really hard to use in like a lot of decks, but the decks where you can use it are actually going to be pretty good with it, I think, because you mostly you have to like empty your hand pretty much, because you want to be able to like free to cast the cards, and you want to be able to play your lands off that you find off of them. And so you want to play this on like turn 4, you play it, and then if you like see a land, you can immediately play that land, and then play like the 3-drop that you find, or you can play the 5-drop if you hit a 5-drop. So, but if you do hit 2 spells, then you might have the chance to play both of them, because you really want to be able to get both cards worth. So you don't really ever play this on turn 2 unless you were desperate for a land, which I guess is kind of a nice upside as well. Just kind of a cool card draw effect. Again, as I was saying, like white decks struggled to get card draw, and this is kind of the form of card draw that red decks get. And I think this is a really cool version, especially to see it common. So I'm excited to see how it plays out. It looks like it could be pretty neat. It's not going to be game breaking, I don't think, but it's kind of cool. And I like the design space. Next is Apprentice Sharpshooter. I think think this is a kind of cool design. Like the 3 mana 1/4 is like a deceptively good attacker when it's getting counters. Like 2/5s are like kind of scary when they're attacking, which is just kind of funny. So it's going to be fun to see that gameplay play out. Training is a weird mechanic. I try not to be negative, but it's just like the mechanics in this set are very odd to me. Like it just feels like almost like they just like couldn't think of anything, and so they just like added a bunch of random text to their cards. um, but yeah, training. I don't know. It's a fun. Like it's gonna be play out pretty solidly. I think it's just I don't love mechanics that you kind of like have to play like one. There's only one way to use it, so like you have to attack to use training. It's like not super ton of nuances, but you can use like auras and stuff like that to pump your creatures and stuff to make them better at training your other creatures. And this is gonna be fun to attack with like a 2/5 and then attack with a 3/6. It's just gonna get massive and then stay back on blocks. So just kind of cool design. I mostly wanted to highlight Cloaked Cadet because I love the artwork. I know it's not super analytical, but I just think it's hilarious because I'm just imagining because they're a cadet, they're just like doing all of this as part of their training program, and they're like, I thought it would be because they're just like they've got a full commando like bush costume or something where they're like hiding in the swamp and they're still just a cadet. Like imagine how good the actual rangers are if this is what the training is like. This guy is just a 5-mana 2/4. Like if you're a full on like cloaked ranger, you've got to be like a 5-mana 6/6 like shroud or something like that. I just thought that the artwork, it just makes it look like a grizzled veteran to me, which is just kind of funny. I think the card's interesting too. I think it's just really small for what you're paying. So it's like if you play this and you're like behind, you're just in so much trouble. But it seems like the sort of thing where you could get some card advantage out of it. It's also kind of sad that you can only like it's one or more. So if you put like 2 counters on a creature, you don't draw 2 cards. But I guess that makes kind of some sense. Yeah, only once per turn triggering is kind of just a little bit. I don't think that extra downside is necessary. But maybe it's meant to prevent some like infinite combo or something. But yeah, kind of I was mostly another one of the ones where I just liked the artwork and thought it was kind of a funny story. Mulch is back. This is a really sweet card, and I think that it's kind of deceptively powerful. Whenever there's a card that lets you look at the top 4 cards of your library, you don't have to sweat the math. You literally just divide your like you have your deck size, and then you just divide what your type you're looking for by 10. So like if you have 17 lands in your deck, on average, when you look at the top 4 cards of your library, you're going to see 1.7 lands. So you're going to draw like a little bit over 1.5 cards on average. So like if you drawing 2 cards drawing 2 cards is pretty standard, and missing completely is not super likely. And so if you have graveyard synergies and care about filling your graveyard, Mulch is kind of the perfect card for you. So kind of a nice card to see coming back. I think it's going to add a lot to the set in terms of what it does with the graveyard and things like that. But yeah, Mulch is back. It has made its return. Kind of a gruesome clearing, by the way. Like, yikes. Next is Ancient Lumberknot. I always have a soft spot for like the Assault Formation type cards, or if you're really going OG, like Dora and the Siege Tower type cards. I think this one's really sweet. I'm excited to see this sort of card. I think build-arounds really add a lot to a set because it makes the draft more interesting, because all of a sudden, if I have an Ancient Lumberknot, I care about certain cards that other people just don't care about, like very much at all. And like it just changes the draft really in a fun way, and I really like this sort of deck, and it's going to play well with like that 1/4 and like all of your like little creatures that maybe aren't necessarily like priorities for other decks. So you just like turtle up and then you just drop your Ancient Lumberknot and hit him for like 12 out of nowhere when all of your creatures had like 4 power combined a second ago. So just a real fun like build around. It makes me want to play it because I like this sort of effect, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun to kind of see how pick orders adjust. Next up is Honored Heirloom. I'm actually kind of excited for this card because I feel like having just this incidental graveyard hate sitting in play is just going to really screw with some opponents. Like you just play this and then all of a sudden your opponent's just like, well, I have a disturb creature in play, but if it dies, it's just getting exiled immediately, because in the mid game, like 2 mana to get rid of one of their cards they're going to cast is just like super free. And you can even just start clearing out their graveyard for if they have like a raise that effect or things like that. So I think this card, if you actually like care about like ramping up to the late game, could actually just be like a pretty solid card, because having access to recurable graveyard hate can just really mess some people up. So kind of a neato card. It's also kind of interesting to see like the like, I don't know. I don't know the flavor of it. I guess the flavor text kind of explains that. I hadn't read the flavor text, but I guess they were repairing the twisted symbol of Avacyn as the first step in restoring faith in the church. So I was like, man, I wonder why the Avacyn symbol is like made of rainbow glass. And I guess that's why, because they fixed the shattered glass. So now it's got a cool story behind it too. Like, that's pretty neat. I don't know. I'm digging the card like design and all the flavor. And I just think it's going to perform a little bit better than it looks potentially. Like 3 mana to tap for any color is also just good fixing for like any deck that needs it. So if you're playing a certain like controlling deck that doesn't have any fixing, just put an Honored Heirloom in there and just really randomly hose your opponent's graveyard decks. I feel like it's going to make things awkward for certain archetypes. Next up are some of the new Disturb cards. They Disturb as enchantments on the backside, so that's going to be pretty interesting to see how it performs. I just think Mischievous Catgeist is a sort of card that just snowballs out of control in certain scenarios, and the backside, being able to put that onto a flyer is really like powerful. So this card just looked really good to me, because if you're on the play and you play this and your opponent like misses their 2-drop, you just take over the game, because then you kill their 3-drop and then just the game's like over, essentially, is what it feels like. I'm not sure I love this sort of design all the time, but it is kind of staying with the way sets are made these days, where you really have to make sure you impact the game early. You can't just sit back and chill for a few turns and know that you're going to be okay if you like sacrifice some life points, because they're going to be generating an advantage on you with this card. And so it's the sort of thing that really makes me want to prioritize those early drops. And then the fact that you get the extra aura just gives you like extra value, because you're usually going to be able to use the aura and then immediately draw a card. And so it just makes your opponent like unable to like attack you in a lot of spots, because they know that you can like Cat-like Curiosity and then like use a removal spell, and all of a sudden you're just getting in for extra damage. So it just really makes the game awkward. This card's going to be a really high pick, I think, just based on my initial impression. And also the artwork is incredible. Like, I don't know who draws these cats, but every time there's a cat in a piece of artwork, it's just like incredibly lifelike. I don't know. And I also love the flavor text, because I never get any knitting done, but I don't entirely mind. Like, I wouldn't mind either if there's an adorable cat was playing with my fictional yarn. Like, it might be the reason they don't get any sewing done is because their ball of yarn is made out of like spirit strands. Like, it's not actually a real ball of yarn; it's the kitten's ball of yarn, so you can't really knit with it. But I think it's really cool. Like, this card just looks great to me, and I'm kind of excited to play with it and kind of terrified of playing against it. Like, don't be afraid to use your good removal spell on their 2-drop if you really need to, just so they don't just draw infinite cards against you. But yeah, cool card. Next up is Weaver of Blossoms. I like this card as well. I think it's really good because the front half is just like totally worth it on its own. And it gives green a lot of things that green is good at. Like, it gives it some fixing, some ramp. Those are just 2 things that green likes to have. We saw a similar card in Throne of Eldraine, 3 mana, 2/3, Rosethorn Acolyte. Add 1 mana of any color. And this card is like going to play a similar role. I think it's nice when green gets color fixing and mana ramp attached to creatures. It just makes those creatures interesting. A 3 mana, 2/3 is a solid body. And then the fact that it like flips into a werewolf is kind of nice. It's like good upside, and sometimes if it is already nighttime, you'll have a little bit of extra stats, so your card can be a little bit more relevant, or you can get some extra ramp going, though. By the time it flips, it's probably just going to be a little bit of an extra stat boost. I like the design. I think it's just it feels good to see a design like this where the front half, you don't really care about it flipping. I think that's the key for werewolves, because I think when werewolves first came out, I think a lot of the cards were more clunky. It feels like, and then in modern sets there's just like random like 1-drops that are actually really good running around, and so you don't just get to play you don't get to reliably keep it nighttime for your werewolves. They just flip back and forth, and I think that makes it a little bit harder for them to compete. So you really need the front side to actually just be a relevant card, which this one certainly is. And also, like, I like the werewolves where the flavor is that the person is kind of like a good person, or the people like were kind of mean to the werewolf, and then the werewolf gets its revenge when it becomes nighttime. Like, there's some like flavors of that in this set as well, where it's like the people are like bullying the werewolf, and then the werewolf is like, oh yeah, well, you'll just wait till the moon comes out, and then you'll see. But yeah, living in harmony with nature does not always mean living in peace. Just like they're just like making some flower chains, like daisy chains, and then they've still got the daisy chain on, and then they're just out for blood or whatever. Just blossom clad werewolf. I just love it. Oh my, and they're Weaver of Blossoms. Oh my gosh, this card is just sweet design. And then Drogskull Infantry, cool one. When I see this card, I think rock solid, and probably that has something to do with the art, where it's just like the spirit just looks incredibly solid. Just, he's got his shield, he's got his sword, he's got his tri-cornered hat. It's like the George Washington of Innistrad. But yeah, I think this card just can perform really well. The back half of it doesn't like seem that good, but the fact that you just kind of free roll it on a 2 mana 2/2, like 2 mana 2/2s are just like, you play 2-mana 2/2s like every time you have them if they have like marginal upside, and even when they don't have marginal upside, you often play them. And this one, like giving something +2/+2 is no joke. Like usually you wouldn't play that as its own card unless it like even if it costs like just 1 mana. But the fact that you kind of get to free roll it in the late game and make your flyer scarier or your lifelink creature scarier or like even just a normal like 3/3 into a 5/5 is just really nice upside. So I think this card is just gonna be rock solid. You pretty much always looking at the 2 drops is a good place to go when you're trying to figure out how good a color is going to be, how a set's going to play out, and this card just looks pretty good to me, so I'm excited to play it, and it looks quite nice. But yeah, that's going to do it for this Crimson Vow preview card. Look, I just went through some of the cards that looked cool to me. I'd love to hear which cards you found interesting. Let me know in the comments section down below, and I'll be happy to discuss them with you. Also, remember to hit that like button to help the video succeed. Let me know you want to see more videos like this in the future. If this video is successful and you want to see me make one where I go through the rares that caught my eye, I could do one like that if there's enough interest. And also subscribe for more content, more Crimson Vow. For some reason, I keep forgetting this name of the set. More Crimson Vow content, like draft videos, my draft guide, that sort of thing for the set. So subscribe to the channel for that. You can click the bell icon to get notified when I post future videos. And if you did make it all the way to the end of this video, in the comment section down below, leave hashtag diving in, because this is like the first real video where I've kind of looked at these Crimson Vow cards and talked about them a bit. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I enjoyed talking about the cards, and it's always a lot of fun exploring a new set, and I hope you are enjoying that aspect of the game too. Until next time, I will. How do I usually end a video? I usually say, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you next time.